Well, Shane Wilson is unveiling a new work of art and hoping to put an old one back together. The former Yukoner is now based in British Columbia. He's back in the territory to unveil a series of sculptures in Haines Junction. He's also hoping to take a look at a carving that was damaged in a recent theft. Seasons is an elaborately carved moose head lifted from the Canada Game Centre last year. After being on the wanted list for several months, it was finally returned, but the thieves had damaged the piece. Shane Wilson obviously has a lot on his plate, but he's taken some time out to chat with me here this afternoon. Good afternoon, Shane.
Good afternoon, Cheryl.
How are you today?
Good. It's a lovely afternoon out there.
Good. Well, I'm glad to have you here. Let's start with Haines Junction, where you unveiled sculptures yesterday. Could you describe those for me?
Certainly. I've been working for the last 4 years on a series of bronze skulls. I call them my Skullpture series, spelled S-K-U-L-L. Pture. And during the Canada Winter Games, when the torch relay was in Haines Junction, I noticed their convention center was filled with marvelous art, animal-related art, but quite beautiful, and came upon the idea of donating this series so that it could be kept in its entirety to the village of Haines Junction for display in the St. Elias Convention Center. And so I proposed the idea to them and found out that they have an art acquisition committee. They've got a budget. I think that Haines Junction spends more on art than the rest of the territory combined each year, which is phenomenal. Quite a forward-thinking community. Anyway, they accepted the donation, and it was unveiled yesterday in Haines Junction.
Now, there are a number of beautiful pieces in that building. Where in the building are your pieces going to be?
Well, if anyone's been to the junction, they've seen how the main entrance opens onto a spiral staircase. Well, a wide spiral, not a tight little one. And underneath the spiral staircase, there's quite a lovely space. And so they've commissioned the architect of the building to come up with a display case that will fit perfectly with the curve of the staircase right below the stairs.
So just as you enter the building, your sculptures will be right there?
Well, yes, but you'll have to sort of scoot around sideways a little bit to see them, but they'll be there.
Now, Shane, what inspired you to carve not only animals familiar to the Yukon, but people too?
Well, I've always loved skulls. I mean, I think skulls are neat. And actually, it's kind of interesting because I think the committee was a little concerned how the community would take the fact that these were carved skulls, albeit cast in bronze. And people love them. At least that's what they seem to indicate. I think lots of people love skulls. I mean, skulls are really neat. But you can't carve every kind of skull. I mean, I've carved moose skulls and so on. They're big. There's a lot of bone to them. They're easy to work. But other skulls, there are philosophical, practical, regulatory difficulties carving them. And so what I decided to do in order to continue to work with this form that I love was to cast skulls that couldn't otherwise be carved, create wax replicas of them, cast them in bronze. And in this particular case, I actually carved the bronze as I would carve the bone or the antler itself.
So how did you come across these skulls that were later cast in bronze? Where did they come from?
Well, a few of them I collected myself. A few I borrowed. And the Renewable Resources in Faro actually lent me quite a few of their skulls from the Yukon to use. And unfortunately, it was more of a gift after they had been cast, because when you cast the skulls, it changes them a little bit. They're not as returnable, shall we say.
So when could I see these, or when could we see these in Haines Junction?
The case is in the design process now, so I don't actually know what the timeline is at this point, but certainly they will likely put out some kind of notice as to when they'll be officially unveiled in their new location.
Okay, now Shane, I want to change gears for just a moment and talk about seasons. And of course, this is your piece, the very elaborately carved antlers that were at the Canada Game Centre. And we spoke with you numerous times over the last year when they went missing, when they were stolen. First, can you sort of describe the damage that happened to these antlers? Because as they were being stolen from the art centre, a piece actually was chipped off.
Well, I'd love to do that, but first I've really got to say thank you to CBC Radio and to Susan Stanley especially, because she kept following the story and kept it alive. And I really think that because of her persistence, all kinds of things came into play. The Art Bank in New York, the Art Loss Register in New York, and so on and so forth. And ultimately the piece was turned in or recovered. So I'm very grateful to CBC. So thank you. And now, having said that, I was very pleased today when walking in. I mean, they've been damaged. There's some wear and tear on the upper surface where the carving is. Mold, little mold growth, yellowing. The tine, the big lower tine that broke off during the robbery, changed the shape of the antler just slightly enough so that it won't be able to be put back on exactly where it came off. I'm not sure how they're going to do that. But overall, I was very pleased. It's intact.
So can it be fixed?
Sure, yeah.
What will they have to do to fix it?
Well, I think that would be a question that you should put to Valerie at the Heritage Branch, because she's going to be the conservator that will repair it. But basically, she's going to try and eliminate the mold, spores that are growing there, possibly do something about the color, and reattach the tine that broke off with a conservator glue. It won't be a perfect fix, but it'll be there and people can see it, and it'll just become part of the story of the piece itself.
Now, Shane, the piece was originally installed at the Canada Game Centre. Do you think it will go back there once it's repaired?
I don't know if that's decided yet, but I hope so. That was the place that was chosen initially for it, and I see no reason why it shouldn't go back there.
Has this experience changed your view of the value of public art?
Interesting question. I think public art is valuable, very valuable. Probably way more valuable than private art, because the public gets to enjoy it. I mean, anyone who's traveled through Europe and other countries, I mean, every square inch almost is adorned with public art or buildings that are done just so. And I think it enriches our public life enormously, really. I can't really place a value on it in terms of culture and identity and all that kind of thing.
Well, Shane Wilson, thank you very much for coming in today.
Well, thank you very much, Cheryl.
Shane Wilson is a former Yukon artist and the creator of Seasons, a massive moose antler sculpture stolen but now found. And you can also check out his new work in Haines Junction. Shane Wilson lives in Nanaimo, British Columbia.